everyone. We are live. My name is Kai Marie Robertson, and I'm here with my lovely co host.
Chevelle Mavens.
And we are we are Two Peas on One podcast. So the reason why we're very excited is that we had a lot of technical difficulties for our first episode, but hopefully we have worked out all the kinks. We're really excited to be here with you all to share with you what we have planned, not only for this episode, but for this podcast. So essentially, Chevelle and I always have lengthy conversations about what is going on in the world. And, we just talk about everything from politics to if it's a natural disaster or things like anything you can think of that you're seeing on the news, we're talking about. And so we kind of were just wondering, other people are probably having similar conversation or other thoughts about everything that's going on. And how are they able to maintain sanity? Because you have bigger things that are going on in the world, and then small, things that are happening in your household. Could be maybe health issues or financial issues on top of major things that are going on. So what we wanted to do is to create a platform where we could talk about real issues, to talk about how we're feeling. Because oftentimes when we would share, we're like, oh, you feel that way too? I'm feeling that way too. Girl was like, oh, we was both feeling the same way and never shared. So we wanted a community where we can be honest, share, but also talk about what we can do to prioritize our mental health and wellness, and what can we do during those difficult moments that we don't how do we keep ourselves grounded during those tough times? And so that's why we wanted to start this podcast. And then I'll turn it over to Chevelle.
Yeah, thanks. No, you're absolutely right. We talk about all of the different things in the world. And we're like, I know we're not the only people that thinking this same stuff or having these discussions. So we thought it would be so cool to create a place where we can be real, we can be honest, we can talk about different hardships, our frustrations, not only to share the different challenges that's going on in that moment, but also how we can protect our mental health during these difficult times. I mean, one thing I always say is if you don't deal with your mental health will deal with you. Because if you're not doing well mentally, it will affect you physically. So instead of letting it, fester inside, come join our podcast so we can talk about it. We can talk about different things that's happening and how we can work through these things so we can be mentally well.
Yes, that's so important. And as we said, we'll talk about different things that are trending on the news and what's trending maybe even on social media, not from the lens of necessarily reporting what the news is saying, but just how is this affecting you? How is this impacting you? And we'll also talk about things such as relationships, whether it be husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, kids, all different type of relationships, because that's all a part of us and has an impact on our overall mental health and well-being. So we are going to cover a lot of topics, but today we're going to be talking about a couple of things that have really been trending in the news. So first, we are going to start off with talking about the storms. I'm sure everybody has been glued to their television watching what's been going on. We're both in North Carolina, so just seeing what's going on in Asheville and the surrounding areas, Tennessee, also Florida with the devastation caused by Helene. And then on the heels of Helene, we have Milton. And so I'm sure a lot of people are just exhausted by all of this, just the storms, and just you're trying to put all the pieces back together just in time for the meteorologist to say, guess what, guys, we have another hurricane on the horizon. And this is the route that it looks like it's taking. So that can be very scary. I know, Chevelle, when I saw the devastation, the aftermath of Helene, I was in shock. I couldn't believe that took place in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. That storm hit us. Thank God, we both were in safe, areas. Well, I'll say safer,
Mm-hmm.
because, where the area that I live, central North Carolina. There was a lot of trees that fell down and everything. There was some that fell on people's homes, some that fell on apartments, but nothing to like the well. We were very fortunate and lucky.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think there's a delay, but that's all right. We'll work through. We showed up. We're here. It's all good. Um, but yeah, so with seeing that, it just causes you to really realize like what's really, and I'm not saying your house is extremely important. That's a place of that's where you go, that's safety. That's where you have family gatherings. And so that is devastating, just seeing a tree come through your house or your home being washed away or just other types of flood damage that can occur during these storms. And it was very tough to watch, and I can't even imagine going through it. But mentally, that can take a toll on, of course, on the people that are going through it, whether directly or your family member is going through it, but also just us watching. What did you feel just seeing that, Chevelle, like seeing the homes, seeing the devastation, and then you hear like another storm, this Milton is coming. And even though it's all the way in Florida, you're like, oh my God, like now what?
Kai, I'm not sure if you can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I
I don't
just
know what
think
is it doing over
there's
here,
a
but it's like I
delay.
can hear you, but okay. Okay. So I want you guys to understand there's a delay. So I'm not just sitting here staring. I'm waiting until I can hear Kai finish her sentence, which is probably like a couple. Then I'm gonna jump in. Okay. So I didn't hear everything that Kai said, but whatever she said, I totally agree with it. And yes, I think she was talking about the fears, just going with the storms. Um, and I don't know if I can jump in and just talk about some of the things we can that would help dealing with that on like,
Sure.
mentally experiencing that. Okay, so I think some of the things that, we just have to recognize that, our natural feeling and anxiety during the storms. I think, just storms in general, but what we're seeing, regardless if you believe in global warming or not, one thing I think we both can agree on is that the storms are getting worse. And they're getting stronger. So, I want people to validate those feelings despite what you believe about, the weather, global warming. But we just have to acknowledge that. And I think that's the first step of dealing with any type of like anxiety that we having inside. So let's just look at the cause of anxiety. With these storms, like Kai was saying with the Helene, then we just had Milton, that's I think is went through Florida yesterday and last night. you know these storms can trigger that flight or fight response due to being unpredictable. The potential dangers, like I said, the west of North Carolina here, we saw the dangers. The unfortunate part, Kai and I both love up in Western North Carolina
Mhm.
front, and that's because of the storms, and those type of storms can cause anxiety because it's out of our control. So that psychological part of it can heighten your anxiety. So what some of the things that I think we can quickly talk about what you can do is coping mechanisms, right? So a part of the coping mechanism, I would say preparation. We prepare in our house. I'm quite sure you are preparing in your house, when storms are coming. And when you prepare, it kind of reduce the anxiety because you're taking some of the control. That's a sense of control. I'm taking a lead on what I can do. Think about emergency routes if you do have to leave. Have a communication plan with your family. I don't know, what's some of the things you do, Kai, to prepare? Would like to cope with that.
Yeah, I think one thing is like knowing where like our important documents are. Like, and that, because that's one thing that I saw when I was watching some of social media, and people were saying like, I didn't even have my ID. And I'm not saying like a storm come in and you're like, oh, let me grab my license. But it's just like, if you know that there's a
Mhm.
major storm coming through, where are these important documents and where's a safe place for us to store them? Because, when you say, if worst case scenario, when you lose your home or it's severely damaged, unfortunately, even though you're maybe getting money through FEMA or whatever other agency, you may need to provide some type of documentation. And so just like a safe place where those documents can go. Best case scenario, it's in a location that is easily you can grab to while you then
Mhm.
evacuate and go to a place that's safer. But that's one thing Dwayne and I always go over, like, okay, this is where these documents are. This is where these documents are. So if something happens, make sure you go here and grab them. And like, I love what you said, like having a plan in place if something
Mhm.
happens, there's a storm happening. If I'm on the road and let's say Dwayne, who's my husband, he's at home, how do we communicate to make sure like, hey, this is the best place to go? So I think just having those conversations, and like you said, like storms are getting stronger now. So even if you live in a place where it's like, that never happens here, in Asheville, we never thought that we would get a flood like that. Like that, we never thought that would happen. So I think
No.
it's just better to take these precautions, have the conversation, and have a plan in place.
Yeah, be prepared. One of the things we did in our family when because we're from New York. So when we moved from New York down here, one of the things I said, okay, we don't have, at that time when we moved 10 years ago, we didn't have family that was close. So what I did is took copies of my birth certificate, my passport, and I sent it back to my mother-in-law just in case. You know what I mean? Like just in
Mm-hmm.
case if something happened, you have copies because yes, you don't know, like for example, the people in Western North Carolina, um, the Department of Motor Vehicle is no longer there as well. You know what I mean? For them to get their
Yeah.
IDs. So if you
Yeah.
send copies away to a family members you trust, because that's your personal information, you want to make sure you
Right.
trust them. But they can have copies of that. But I like your ideas, like having a place that where you can grab them and putting them in, like, what do you call them, a freezer bag. So because
Mm-hmm.
if you do go through the water, they will stay dry. So no, I think,
Right.
just that give us some sense of control,
Mm-hmm.
on what we can do to prepare ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yes. And I think
And I
I
think
saw, I'm
mhm.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Uh, One other thing too is maybe getting a generator. Like, if your power is out, maybe investing in a generator is something that that is works for your family if you have your own home. And that way, if the power is out for a period of time, that way you have some type of backup system. Because let's be honest, food prices are expensive, so nobody is trying to throw out food. So if there's a way that you can
Hello.
continue to get the power in until the power comes back on, like do that.
Yes. It went out again. I don't know if you can hear me, but I agree with everything you said. So
Everybody listen, Chevelle says I'm always right.
one more thing I want to mention is about staying informed but not overwhelmed. So I encourage you when you're preparing, for these storms, I want to encourage you to be up to date with reliable information, but also you need to avoid, that over consume of storm news,
Mhm.
because that also, sometimes I love the media, but also the other part of the media, they sensationalize the media that's coming through with the storms, so be informed, but limit yourself in checking for updates, like, because if you just check for updates, that help prevent some of the anxiety cycle that you can go through. We'll talk more about dealing with the media, but I just be informed, but not overwhelmed.
Right. I like that. I like that you said that. Be informed, but not overwhelmed. And in this 24-hour news cycle, it's easy to get overwhelmed because if you're not watching TV, then you can get the news sent to your phone, right? You can get it on your Facebook feed. You can get it just pop up on your phone. You maybe not even in an app, but it's just coming up on your phone, the latest news of what's going on. So maybe it's putting up some of those blockers on your phone so you're not getting so much news. You have to really be proactive when it's like, okay, I'm going in, I'm reading too much. And to be honest with you, that happened to Dwayne and I. And this was around the time that we were looking for a new home. And so we were like, okay, we want to buy our own house. But we were watching so many different people giving so much different information about now's not the right time. You need to wait. And then other people are like, no, don't wait now. If you wait, then you'll never get your house. And other people are like, no, because the housing market. And so we just became paralyzed because we're like, I don't know who to believe because everybody is so convincing of what they're saying. And so we just had to come together and say, all right, listen, what's best for us? And that's the path that we decided to go down, or else you'll be stuck. And then just not making a decision is making a decision.
Exactly. I love that. Not making a decision is making a decision. Yes. Yes.
And so, so with that being said,
and the only lag that I want.
You're good.
That was that lag. Oh, Jesus, help us. But it'll be better. Just make sure you come back. It'll be better the second episode. The only thing I just add is this, when preparing for this stuff, just make sure you check in with your loved ones. And that should also include your neighbors. Because, I always say family is not always blood related. So check in with your neighbors, encourage staying connected with your friends, families. That could be virtually, so you don't feel isolated, or, also they can be a distraction to talk to them so you don't have to focus on the storm. But having a plan, making sure they know your plan, because if you're going through the storm and they're going through the storm, and then if they're in like a safe area, they're going to be concerned about you. So making sure that, your friends and family know your plan so they know where to check, to make sure that you're okay. And at the end of the day, we know that with the recent storms, this is not the end of them. We're just the beginning of storm season. So the best thing is, if you're dealing with anxiety, all the things that we talked about today is not working, you might have to seek professional help. You do some counseling to help you with being overwhelmed. That persistent fight or flight feeling that you're having. So, always think of a therapist or a counselor. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing to talk about our feelings, to someone that can help us filter out some things and create a plan. And again, natural disasters is going to be coming. So I just want you to be prepared. And if you need a little extra help, it's okay. It's okay.
Right. So true. We don't have to bottle up our emotions, our feelings. We can, and that's our goal here is to create community where people can share without feeling judged. But this is what I'm going through. Right. So another topic that is in the news cycle and has been for a while, if anyone is following politics. Now, we are not going to get into who you vote for, who you support, none of that at all. But we're saying that when you're looking at what's going on, I think it's fair to say on both sides, there's a lot of fear, right? It's like fear if this person gets elected, fear if that person gets elected, what's going to happen to the country. And that has caused Chevelle and I having conversations about having this as our first episode. And I was just kind of looking through the news and just seeing kind of where Americans are mentally with all that. Because I know I feel exhausted. I feel like, oh my goodness, I'm looking forward to this being over. But then I'm also concerned, like, well, what happens when it's over? What if whoever doesn't like which way this goes? So that has created for myself a little bit of anxiety about what is going on and what happens after election day, and will everybody just kind of say, okay, whomever won, let's move forward, or are we now gearing up for something else? And so I was looking up on the about how other folks were feeling online, and some people are feeling anxious, just kind of anxious about the future. A lot of young people, especially, they're not really feeling too positive about where the country is headed. Now, when I say that, it means like, what does the future look like for them? Like, will they be able to live that American dream? Will they be able to have a family and buy a home and all that? And so just thinking about all that and being a parent and maybe trying to explain that to your kids when you're also feeling like, I'm scared with you. I also don't know, how I feel
Right.
about this. That's a lot. On top of we're involved with Ukraine right now, what's going on in the Middle East, it's just has been nonstop. So Chevelle, what you said about limiting limiting your media intake, and that can mean social media too. I think that is so important because it can feel very scary right now for a lot of people.
Yes, Kai. Um, I'm telling you, just you can't escape. It's on the news, it's on the commercials, it's on the radio between, your favorite song, then you hear it's to the point that sometimes, leaving your house and you looking both ways like, is it safe to leave? I mean, because
Right.
I feel that if I just hear the stuff that they're saying, it's like a war zone out there. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? It's just
Mm-hmm.
so it's like, what I had to do for my mental wellness is like what you said. I had to limit my exposure to the news. And I'm the type of person I would watch the 5 o'clock news, then I would watch the 6 o'clock news for my local news, then I watch the world news. I had to limit myself and said, okay, I'm gonna watch the news maybe twice a week, but I'm gonna watch the weather channel for my local
Mm-hmm.
weather so I know what's going on. I need to know if it's gonna rain, if I'm going to work, it's gonna be foggy in the morning. But because it's just you have to be intentional about what you consume, and that's where we can take that control. Control the exposure. I'm getting my computer cord here because my computer about to die. But again, we're in the moment. This is real life right now.
Right.
But the news can cause heightened anxiety, so we got to set boundaries with ourselves. We got to set boundaries with the news intake. That we got to set boundaries and the conversations that we have to break it up during the day. Sometimes you have to disconnect and recharge, and that's what I do. I It's just too much. It's too much, and I'll be so happy when this election is over. But also, even when it's over, the news it's something always bad in the news,
Yes.
and it's to be informed, but you have to set boundaries because again, it will dwell on your mental health and you're like, you just feel helpless, so it's just
Mm-hmm.
you can take control. We can't control what's happening in the world. To an extent we can if you choose to vote or whatever, but far as with politics, you have to take control and just step aside and say, I gotta disconnect.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree with that. And we have question reliable info. I mean, I think that when I think about reliable info, I think of listening to, say, you're like, okay, I just want to be abreast of what's going on. And I think that's listening to different news outlets. Because let's be honest, we know that there's like more conservative news outlets, and we know that there is, let's say, more liberal. So is there a way that you can find like a middle ground? So I just think this is what I'll put it this way. This is what I do. I listen to, read all different type of sources, and then I reach my own conclusion. And so that's what I just kind of recommend for people to do. And that can also help lower anxiety, because instead of me feeling like, oh my God, the world's caving in, I just kind of look at different news sources. And then I'm like, okay, now earlier I did say feeling a little anxious, which is true because other people may not maybe viewing this election or what's going on differently. But I think that because I try to have a level look at what's going on, I can kind of be more measured. So I may be feeling a little anxious, but I can also begin to tap it down, say, okay, Kai, just take a break from this outlet, or let's just watch something else. So I think it's important to read different sources. That can kind of help you have an idea of what's going on. You can still feel a little anxious, but even though you're feeling anxious, because you're not just in fear, you can also think clearly and plan ahead. And I think that's what's most important. I know we lost Chevelle. Should be popping back on. Here she is. She's back. Sorry. That's okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I told you my computer was dying. And it died. So
you're back. So Chevelle, I was just saying, we had a question about the reliable info, and I was just saying that for me personally, I look at all different type of media outlets. Like, we all know that there's certain news that may be more conservative and some more liberal. I read kind of everything, and then from there, I make my own conclusion. I still may feel anxious about some things, but as I said, reading different sources allows me to be a little bit more level-headed. And I feel that even though I may be a little anxious, I'm not operating in fear. So I can also plan. Like, okay, I feel a little uneasy about this, so I can plan. I'm in paralyzed, can't move because I'm so scared.
right. No, I totally agree with you. And I think, you know, we're living in a day of age of technology with information, which is great, but the downside of it, everyone has a camera and a microphone and can sound truthful. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important not just, to seek the truth out for yourself, like you said, but even with that, you don't want to become overwhelmed because it
Mm-hmm.
can become so overwhelming. Um, because you just don't know what to believe. But
Mm-hmm.
we got to use our critical thinking skills, I like to call it, and seek our information for ourselves, but also we have to create a mental balance with that,
Mm-hmm.
because it become overwhelming and really can affect people. I mean, I've had, I'm a social worker, if you guys don't know. I have clients that really it affect their sleep,
Mm-hmm.
because they're so afraid. They said there's not going to be no more food, or I'm going to lose my one person told me that they're going to lose their social security. And I said, okay, so where did you get that from? Like, did you get a notice from Social Security? All of these things. And it was just, well, someone told me they're going to take my pension away. And I'm like, well, the government can't take your pension. So it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
I try to talk with them, but also, help them limit what they're hearing on the radio, help them limit on what they're hearing on the television, because it can consume you and it
Mm-hmm.
can eat you up.
Yes, very true. And so I will say this too. What it's been helpful, Chevelle, for me and
Mhm.
my husband is that when you can kind of tell when someone is on that news kick. Because we're like, I read this or I saw that. So we
Mhm.
would kind of hold each other accountable. And he would say, like, hi, how much you been watching? Like, because you being real negative. And I'm like, okay. So having that like accountability person that can
Mhm.
also help you, like, I think you need to start watching stuff, or I think you need to step back. Because sometimes you don't know. You're so into, like, you can go down a rabbit hole. And the next thing you know,
Mhm.
hours later, you've consumed all this information. So I think having that person that also says, listen, you need to lay off the news, like
Mhm.
go enjoy life because right now you're not.
Yes. So, like you said, go and enjoy life. So you can focus on what you can control. So for me, is like engaging in activities, whatever that is. I want to try pickleball. I keep hearing about this pickleball. I want to try it. You know what I mean?
You should.
I'm gonna go try this pickleball. I gotta get my sneakers. I'm up in my age now. I don't know if I need like elbow pads and knee pads, but I'm gonna try some pickleball. But doing things that you are controlling that make you feel good, sometimes just volunteering. Right now there's a host of things you can volunteer for because, like we talk
Mhm.
about with the storms, there's local church, local shelters. There's so many different ways to volunteer that help people, and sometimes you put yourself out there helping people, that'll help you not deal with those negative thoughts and all of that stuff that we hear in the media.
Mhm. That's so true. And I'll say on my journey, what's been helpful, because with reading and consuming the news, I did realize that to help cope, I wasn't using healthy coping mechanisms. So I was relying on eating like comfort foods. So for me, what you said, Shabelle, like, what can I control? I'm like, so I can control like what I'm eating. And so for me, I started going back to the gym. I started getting back into my yoga practice. And
Mhm.
so even though all these other things continued to happen, I still felt like I had some type of control. And within that, I started setting goals for myself. So I began to focus on my energy into these goals that I had,
Mhm.
which then I had to limit how much news I was consuming because now I was redirecting all that energy into like, okay, I got to wake up early. So I can't be up late. I'll be up there late watching like catastrophe and then go to bed. Like, what is going on?
Uh-huh.
So I had to, when I started redirecting all that and reprioritizing my schedule, then I started to ease away from consuming all that negativity. And I wanted to listen to stuff that's more positive. I started listening to music again and just like feeling more light again than just that heaviness of almost like the weight of the world.
Right. So I would call that like positive distraction. Because
Mm-hmm.
we hear about negative distraction, that's just a positive distraction to like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, because our mind's going to be going anyways, right?
Right.
That's just the way we are designed. For you, you said, okay, I'm gonna put myself on a schedule. I'm gonna go back into my meditation, my yoga. I'm gonna go to the gym, spending time in nature, that physical
Mm-hmm.
activity that
Mm-hmm.
helps with relieving stress. When you disconnect from the screen, like you said, go to bed early, get off. You're not watching all that stuff and wondering why you have bad dreams.
I'm telling you.
Just immerse yourself with things that uplift you, that uplift your life, uplift your spirit. I'm doing more reading. Again, I always listen to music, but I love NPR, but I am limiting my NPR when I'm driving to work and listen to more music or a book, audible books,
Mm-hmm.
and creative projects. Like we just finished our bedroom, putting hardwood floors in our bedroom. I'm not telling you to go that far. My husband is a carpenter, so my help
Right,
was
Chevelle Rose, they gonna have a whole nother type of stress. Like what Chevelle told me, my stress reliever is putting these hardwood floors.
my husband put him in, and I gave him some, ice water. I make sure, he want me to hand him a piece of wood. I hand him a piece of wood. That's when I did help. You know what I'm saying? But I didn't, help. But I did help. You know, so but different things like I kind of know that I used to like making lotions, making
Mm-hmm.
soap, different things that just to make you, I call it happy, just make you
Mm-hmm.
feel good. And those are good things, and that help endorphins in our body that build that happy hormone. I think that's important. For us to step away from that negativity, those negative distractions, and fill it up with positive distractions.
So I agree. I agree. And hopefully with, what we discussed, that can apply to so many things that are going on in your life. And I think one of the takeaways, Chevelle, that you said is focus on what's in your control.
Hmm.
Storms are going to happen. Like they say, life is going to keep lifing.
Yeah.
Um, it is hard being an adult. So it's like,
Yes.
what can I do to try to make the most of my life while I'm here? And that's focusing on things in my control. Not saying that you're oblivious to the world around you, but if you focus on all these larger things, you're gonna just live in constant fear, constant paranoia. And I found myself at one point going to that, and that's no place to live. It's not fun. in that type of space at all.
You're absolutely correct. Live your life. We got one shot. I sound like the Eminem song. We got one shot, one. I don't know. I can't rap. But
Go Chevelle! Go Chevelle!
Lord, if
Join
I had
us
to
for
rap,
Freestyle Thursdays.
no one would ever watch us, really. I cannot rap. But we got, like you said, one life,
Right,
and live it to the best of your ability, and not, be aware, be informed, but not overwhelmed,
right.
and enjoy life. I think that's why we're intended to it, to be here on this earth, to enjoy each other and cultivate friendship and family,
Mm-hmm.
and not get overwhelmed with things that we can't control, but focus on what we can control in our life and our household.
True, true. So I hope you guys enjoyed our conversation today. We will be back again. Chevelle, any last parting words that you want to leave with our audience today?
I think I said a lot of stuff, even lost my internet, not the internet, my battery in my computer here. But I think the one thing is just to remember that you can fix and work on your feelings, what you're experiencing, but how to do that first and acknowledging it. A lot of times we don't want to acknowledge our fears and anxieties, but that's the first step. Just acknowledge it and then create a plan. And you can come here and we can talk about it. We ain't gonna judge you. And cultivate a community here. I don't know. Do you want me to talk about what we're going to talk about next week?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So next week, come back because we're going to talk about another stressor. What we're all experiencing is the rising costs at the grocery store. I don't know about your grocery bill,
Oh
but
my
my
God.
grocery bill is high. It's like I bought a dozen of eggs for $5.99. That is crazy. I'm about to
Mm-hmm.
get a chicken up in my backyard, okay, and lay some eggs because this is crazy. $5.99 for 12 eggs. Lord Jesus. And I got 4 people that living in my household. So kind of we're going to try to come back here next week at 7 p.m.
Yes.
Thursday to talk about tips to help you save money and lower your anxiety when we're walking into that grocery store. Okay. And one more thing, I want you to, this is the last thing I'm going to ask you to do. I want you to like this video. I want you to subscribe to this video, put your notification on so you know when we come back on, so we can talk about all these things. And I want you to come and interact with us. And also probably drop down and let us know what you want us to talk about. We're willing to talk about almost everything or
Mm-hmm.
anything, right?
Yeah. Why
Okay.
not? All right, you guys have a good night.
Yes, and enjoy your week.